Confidence is not a fluke, confidence is a choice, and it begins with our mindset. In this podcast, you will find a variety of research proven strategies that will lead you from being self critical, your worst enemy, to being the most confident version of yourself. I am Olga, former therapist, confidence life coach, blissfully an IVF mother, a wife, and this is the Journey to Happy podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Journey to Happy podcast. I'm Olga, your host, and today I am with a great friend and somebody who I know you will love. She is in Australia, and so it is. We're recording at nighttime, my time, at morning her time, which is so weird. She's waking up, and I'm just like gearing up to go to bed. Her name is Melissa Finlay. Mel is a nutritionist who specializes in women's health, specifically hormones. And her and I have had a lot of conversations lately. And honestly, I've always wanted to bring her into the podcast to talk women's health and hormonal health because of all of you who are following me for fertility purposes, but also women in general should know this information, and it's never extra. It's never going to hurt you. It's actually going to help you. But as you guys know, I recently finished a round of IVF, the fifth one in the last 3 years. And this one just kicked me in the butt. I feel that my body just hated every second of having hormones that are not produced by my body. And it's been 7 weeks since we lost the embryo that was transferred. And I am far from being back to what I would call normal emotionally and physically, especially physically. And even though I have done 4 previous rounds previous to this one, I am surprised to see how my body is responding to it. And I think I know the answer to that. However, so following Mel, as I do loyally on her Instagram account, which you should all, because she has fun, but also very interesting posts about this subject, how she was talking about premenopause. And that got me thinking, this is such a great conversation. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be breaking away some of the myths that you might have about what menopause is and premenopause, the age in which we can expect it, how long that stage lasts, some of the symptoms. Like, she helped me figure something out that I couldn't figure it out with my own naturopathic doctor or my own fertility doctor. And she was like, this makes sense. And so I wanted to have this conversation with Mel here for the purpose of educating you, the woman who's listening, because this is applicable to all of us. And maybe you are in your early 20s. You might know somebody who is not, and who might have some of the symptoms that we're going to be talking about, who might find this podcast specifically really helpful. But also, I don't want to spoil it. You might be in your early 20s and still need this information. So I'm going to leave it at. Mel, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Olga. It's so nice to be here and to see your face over Zoom. It's just, it's lovely.
It's been a long time.
I know.
We've seen each other. And Mel was just telling me that they are on another lockdown in their
in Melbourne. Yeah.
You guys have states.
Yeah, in the state of Victoria. Yeah.
I thought it was funny that you still have, we also have Victoria, but it's funny.
Yeah.
Follow. Anyways, you've been going through.
Yeah, this is lockdown number 6 for us.
6?
And this one, it's the 6th, which is, as I was saying to you yesterday, like, it's so frustrating. But I've just got to remember that I can control how I think and my outlook on the whole situation. So that's what I'm focusing my energy on, and for my children as well. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And this one has gone for 2 weeks already, and we've got another 2 weeks to go before they let us know if it's going to be any longer than that.
And every inhale burns you inside. They're like 2 more weeks, and that's not the end. We don't know. It's like our future, our life is in the hands of somebody else, and it is. So anyways, we won't go into COVID. Nobody wants to talk about COVID.
No.
But we will talk about women's health. So tell me down the journey. What's going on with your nutritional practice? Mel, why don't you just tell them who you are, what you do, and your recent discovered interest in supporting women through perimenopause?
Yes. Well, okay. So my name is Melissa Finlay. And like we just said, I live in Australia in Melbourne, and I'm a holistic nutritionist focusing on women's health. So what that means is that the way that I look at my clients and my patients is to look at them as a whole unit, basically. So I don't just take a diagnosis and treat that diagnosis. I look at everything that's going on for that person so we can get to the root causes of what's going on for them so that we can then fix the symptoms that are going on and hopefully prevent those symptoms from returning because we've addressed the root cause of the issue. So that's me in a nutshell. And women's health is what I'm truly, truly passionate about. And that really came about from my own experiences with struggles with hormone balance and period issues. And then when I had my first child, I started to really focus on the journey for mums because, as you know, Olga, it can be a really hard gig sometimes.
I was just waiting for you to say hard. I'm like, yep, that'll be how I would describe it. It is beautiful. I would do it a million times over again.
Oh my gosh, me too. It's beautiful and hard, and then beautiful and then hard again.
It's just taxing. It's taxing.
Yeah, which is part of the reason why hormone health can get so messed up for women of our age. So we'll talk about that.
Yes. So I told Mel, guys, I am so excited about this conversation because I think more women need to know. And two, because I want Mel to dissect me. And so what we're going to do in this podcast is just talk a little bit about what perimenopause is. And I would love, Mel, if we just kind of break some of the myths that there are amongst women. And I will gladly start them because I can tell you some of the ones I had in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think that I am grieving. Does that make sense? I'm grieving.
Yeah.
Shit, that's me. And you recently posted something about looking at it as like when you hit puberty and how like that's just a normal transition. And I like, but I'm being high, and maybe it's because of my own struggle with fertility that I think if I had already all the children I wanted, that I wouldn't be taking such a hard hit with the transition. Nonetheless, so what I want to do is just kind of go over what it is. That's you. Then break away some of maybe 2 or 3 of the myths people may have about menopause and perimenopause and the ages in which, like we can go into that. And then I am going to give you all of my problems. You're going to tell people what you think because I think that will be so helpful to others. And as always, I'm an open book, so I have nothing to hide, people. You want to know something about me, just go on my Facebook. Oh, sorry, my Instagram.
So good. Yes. Okay. So what is perimenopause? It's a transition period, just like you said before, puberty, it's the same type of transition period. So with puberty, we're transitioning from our childhood into our fertile years. With perimenopause, we're transitioning from our fertile years into our non-fertile years, our menopausal years. So it's the step before menopause. So the first myth I'll bust is that it's not, generally speaking, menopause that causes the most issues for women. It's the stage before that, perimenopause, when we're transitioning from that stage into the next stage. And it can take somewhere between 2 and 10 years for us to complete this transition.
2 to 10 years, ladies.
Yep. So it could start, and this is not as common, but it could start as early as 35, that you might start to see some changes to your cycle, changes to things that are going on in your body. That would be classified as very early perimenopause. And it may, I should emphasize that it may not be perimenopause. There might be other stuff going on, but there's no denying that as we head towards that transitional period of our life, external factors like stress, like what we eat, like our environment, start to have more of an impact on our hormones. Whereas in our early 20s, we could probably get away with a lot more stress and doing a lot more detrimental things to our bodies. Whereas as we, 10 years on, so we're 35-ish, those things start to not be such a great idea in terms of our hormone health. So anyway, so 35, it could be the possible time frame for you, but it's more like 40-ish that this could start. And one of the very early signs of perimenopause is that you'll notice a change to your cycle. So it might be that you find that your cycle starts to get a little bit shorter, which is what I've started to see, that my cycle is getting a little bit shorter, or it could get longer. You could start to notice changes to your sleep patterns. So you might find that some parts of the month it's harder for you to fall asleep or stay asleep. And there might be times in the night that you feel like just awake and you can't get back to sleep. Yeah, so there's some of the very early signs of very early menopause.
I want to talk about the insulin resistance.
Yes.
Because that could be a sign, as you were saying.
Yeah, so insulin resistance is a big part of the picture of correcting the symptoms of perimenopause. So what could be going on? There's two different things. It's a little bit chicken or the egg situation. So you might find that you have some insulin resistance, which is pre-diabetes. We'll think about it in that regard. So it's when our insulin is not doing as an effective job as it should be due to lifestyle factors like eating too much sugary junk food. That could be the reason why you're experiencing insulin resistance and therefore having some issues with hormone balance because they are interlinked. Or you could be starting to head down the perimenopause path, and part of that journey is that your estrogen levels start to drop away, they start to reduce. And estrogen is such a pivotal part of insulin sensitivity, so the opposite of insulin resistance. As our estrogen starts to fall away, we have an increased risk of developing insulin resistance, and we might find it harder to do things like shift weight or keep that blood sugar level, which is a really important part to our health. So like I said, chicken or egg. It could be that you're experiencing these symptoms because you have insulin resistance, or you could be experiencing insulin resistance because perimenopause is now a very real situation for you.
The more you talk, the more I want to cry. So
no, don't cry.
Like, yes, that's me. Now, what will be I'm asking this question specifically for my fertility clients because we know numbers that the regular woman doesn't. And that is our AMH. Let me just look that up so that I can.
Anti-Mullerian. I don't know how to say that. Mullerian. Yeah. That's an indicator of your egg stores.
The egg storage. So I know that mine is really low. So what they wanted to for IVF would be a minimum of a 4. I had a 1.9 early this year. And it can change drastically, by the way, at this age.
Yeah.
And for the purpose of this episode, I'm happy to share my age. I'm 30. I just turned 39. And I've been diagnosed with low ovarian reserve since I was 30. So I kind of suspected that I was going to be either entering early menopause or perimenopause as well.
Which I would say is not a common situation.
It's not a common situation, exactly.
Not for that age bracket, no.
No, and the explanation for those listening and maybe freaking out, I had an appendicitis that burst, my appendix burst, and they didn't diagnose it. They misdiagnosed it. 3 different doctors misdiagnosed it, which ended up in septic shock. So my entire system, my entire blood, my entire body was infected. And so doctors suspected that's when a lot of my eggs died, actually. That was a side effect. Okay. So very rare life circumstances. And my sister, my mom never had early perimenopause or had any issues conceiving or low egg reserve. So moving past that. So what will be the correlation between then low AMH, low ovarian egg reserve, and maybe seeing some of the symptoms earlier? Will you say that that's a direct correlation?
Or there's not necessarily a correlation between the two. So you might be going through the early stages of perimenopause, but that number on the AMH is actually completely normal for where you're at. And then the opposite. So there could be extenuating circumstances like yours. And funnily enough, my husband's sister had the exact same thing happen to her. Isn't that crazy?
What?
Her appendix also burst. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. And since then, she's had one successful IVF baby and now pregnant with her second. So,
Nice.
but anyway, the correlation between the two, there is not necessarily a link between the two. And in fact, AMH, I don't look at as much as I look at what's actually happening with the hormones, because you could have a great AMH reserve and you're still not getting pregnant. So why is that? There could be a lot of different reasons why that's happening. Or you could have a very low AMH and you don't even know that because you've successfully had the amount of children that you want to have, and then you're done having children and it's just not an issue. But then, you fall into that category where you have tried to conceive, you've been through rounds of IVF, and therefore you know exactly what's going on in your body, and your AMH is low, and there's probably an extenuating circumstance for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying is that if your AMH is tested and it's low, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are infertile or that you're not going to be able to conceive a child.
Right. And I mean, I would like to also make the disclaimer that despite having had low egg reserve from an early age, that in my IVF cycles, it only meant that I didn't have a bank full of eggs. I had 1 or 3 or 4 eggs retrieved, which is not the norm. They want to see like 20. Not what I had, never aimed for that. And nonetheless, I had 100% fertility rate. So every single egg that was retrieved from my body was fertilized. And not all of them obviously were good quality, and we lost many of them because of probably poor egg quality. But I do like to make that distinction that low egg reserve and doesn't necessarily mean not having the ability to conceive or
fertilize. Which you proved is, you've got your beautiful son.
I do. He's my baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so myths. Let's just jump into what people normally believe. You've been breaking some of this in your social media, which I really love. What will be the most common one?
That perimenopause means you can't conceive. False, you can. That perimenopause means you're old and over the hill. False. It doesn't mean that at all.
That was definitely mine.
And I think the biggest one is that you can stop or reverse perimenopause. That's false. You can't stop perimenopause from happening to you. You can address the symptoms that you're experiencing throughout perimenopause. And those symptoms that you are experiencing are coming from a place of imbalance somewhere in your life. So whether it's your lifestyle, the food that you're putting in your body, there's a few factors, but it generally means that there's something going on that needs to be addressed. Every woman who has lived on this earth, if they lived long enough, they went through this transition. It is something that evolution created for us so that we could live a longer life and be around to help nurture the babies that come into our community. That whole the village mentality. That's, women, older women who have gone through the transition into menopause are really valued in those village societies because they are so helpful with raising the children that come into the village, whether it be their grandchildren or other people's children. That village mentality means that women who have gone through the transition are so valuable because of their experience and their wisdom. I like to think of it like that. It's not something that we have to avoid. It's something that we should be embracing. And it's a time in our life where we should really start to tune into ourselves and give our bodies what it needs, what they need to form balance in our life.
Yeah, I would say that I want to get to embracing. I wouldn't say I'm there. And I believe that I'm not there because I am not done in my head having a family, right? And so anything that threatens that makes me really emotional and I don't like it. One myth I think I've had, and I hope it's a myth, is that you just go crazy in perimenopause. I think of it as an ongoing, 10-year PMS. I'm like, oh my God. And I have seen some women really go more hysterical a bit through this phase. But I think what you're saying is that there are things that we can do.
Yeah.
That those shouldn't really be there. That something's off if we're having.
So there's a professor in Australia of women's health who describes perimenopause as a recalibration of the nervous system. So when we go through this transition and we start to see our estrogen levels taper off slowly over time, and our progesterone as well starts to slowly taper off, our brains have been used to this level of estrogen and this level of progesterone floating around, balancing our neurotransmitters for so long that it then has to figure out how to do the next bit, recalibrate into the next part of living with lower hormone states in our body. So your body's trying to do this process of recalibration, throw in some extra stress going on, throw in some dietary choices that aren't great, throw in environmental stresses like, the toxins in our air, and that can all add up to some not so nice symptoms in the form of, those PMS symptoms. Like I like to call it rage. It's the PMS raginess in that week or 10 days prior to your period. And I've experienced that. And I really feel like that is, and I've seen it in my clients, and it's a result of ongoing stress in our lives. And it's kind of ironic, I think, that these perimenopausal years, they tend to begin as we're rearing our children in modern society. They might be 7, 8, 9, 10 by then, maybe younger. And so we're shipping them off to school and then after school activities, and we're going here, there and everywhere for them. And there's so much, we're giving so much to our kids and to our community and whatnot. And we're leaving very little time and space and energy for ourselves. And so it's kind of no wonder that so many of us these days experience these symptoms of perimenopause.
So you're giving me hope. There's something
yes.
Good.
Yes. So my answer to that is that yes, we might be experiencing those symptoms like this PMS rage that I just described. But yeah, there's so much we can do to help our nervous system recalibrate. So things like the things that the best about, Olga, like meditation, mindfulness, breath work, finding joy in our lives. This is a big one for me at the moment with my clients. And I ask them, what do you do in your day to bring the joy to your life? And a lot of them can't answer that question. There's nothing that they do in their day that is just for the sake of fun and joy, and to not want an outcome. So for example, they might say, oh, well, I exercise. And I'm like, yeah, cool, you exercise, but why are you doing that? There's still a reason why you're doing that, which is, for your fitness, for your aesthetic, for your health. It's not just for fun, So there's very little that we as women in this age bracket do that is just to bring the joy.
What do you do just for fun?
I like to have dance parties.
Yes,
with my kids.
I've seen it, and it's fun, actually.
It's so fun, and I do that. I guess there is a purpose to it, and it's to bring the joy. I do that just to bring the joy for all of us. If we're stuck in that kind of messy energy that's a bit grumpy and downtrodden,
and
turn the music. Yes, turn the music on and dance it out with them, and everyone's feeling better. The whole vibe of the house shifts. And I think in these times, I'm not going to say the C word, even more important, because we're so up in each other's faces all the time, that shifting that energy is so, so important. So dance parties. And also I've recently gotten back into reading fiction just for the sake of reading something entertaining. Before the C word, my reading hours were only dedicated to reading, things for work. So research and learning, which is great, but it's not relaxing. It's not switching your brain off and doing something just for fun. So yeah, reading fiction and dance parties. My son's favorite song at the moment is Lionel Richie's Dancing on the Ceiling. So we play that all the time.
Better than Baby Shark, which is what my son wants to do nonstop.
There's a bit of Baby Shark going on too.
Oh my God. I think we've covered the biggest ones. Yeah, I'm thinking of my fellow fertility women, and I think the worst sentence we can be told is like, oh, you're now menopausal or premenopause, when we're not done. And I've got one son, the one, but I know some people are still in the wait, and so I can imagine that being a very difficult reality to face. But then let's just listen to this episode, because I think that, as Mel is telling us, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not fertile, right? I think
the perimenopause phase does not mean you're infertile. You're still having a cycle. You're still mostly ovulating. One of the first signs of perimenopause, like I said, is a change to the length of your cycle. And that's because you might be having some what's called anovulatory cycles, where you don't actually ovulate. Yeah. So you might experience a shorter cycle or a longer cycle. So it can come with challenges of, the timing around conception. But if you are in tune with your cycle and in tune with your body, it's not a dire situation. And in the very early menopausal years, so with, the 35 to 40 or 41, 42, those changes are subtle. It's not like you're going months and months without a cycle, a period or ovulation. That happens further down the track. So more towards the mid to late 40s and into the 50s sort of period. So yeah, all hope is not lost. There is no reason why perimenopause can't still be childbearing years for the women who want children.
That's good news.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to bring forward me as a patient, because the context for anybody listening who has not been following me, my fertility.seeker Instagram account, where I openly share my journey, especially all of them, but especially my last journey where I made my baby Anna. Throughout that process, as always, I've got a team of people supporting me. So my my fertility doctor sent me for blood work, and he said, yeah, no, we're good to go. I sent the results to my naturopath doctor, and she was like, you have insulin resistance. And so I brought it up to my doctor, and he says, no, you don't. That's still normal. So my naturopath was like, no. You have the insulin resistance that I would have seen on somebody who, like you were saying, is eating a really unhealthy, not unhealthy, but sugary rich diet. And she would likely be overweight and, just described essentially, not me. And so she says, I follow you. I know you exercise on a regular basis. I know the way you eat. Like, it's not hard for me to eat vegetables. I love them. Like, that's what I like eating. Because of being celiac, I've gotten a really low carbohydrate diet to begin with. So we were in shock, and my estrogen was, really low.
Yeah, really low.
And so she was like, I think there must be a blood mistake. Okay. And I never I was going to redo it, but then I never did. I'm like, whatever, my doctor is moving forward. Nobody thinks I have a problem. So and then you posted that perimenopause, you see the estrogen go down, and that could create some insulin resistance. And I was like, well, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, that makes more sense than trying to analyze my own diet, which I feel that with my lifestyle currently, I can't really pinpoint at the end what was first, the egg or the chicken. And in this case, I would say it makes far more sense to where I stand. So that was something that opened my eyes to, maybe Mel is into something here. Maybe I do have perimenopause. I have noticed that when I ovulate now on that window, pretty much feels like I'm PMSing.
Yeah.
Whereas before it didn't. Before it was a very different experience. I felt like amazing.
Yeah.
Ovulation, usually that's when women feel highest libido and they feel good and happy and they can start projects. And I am the rage that you talk about. And just not interested in life. Almost like I want to describe it as an invisible period. I get all the symptoms that I would get if I was in my period, like my boobs get enlarged. Like, I just feel like gross and bloated, and I've retained water. Like, honestly, the only thing missing is
the period.
Yeah.
Well, something that can happen through perimenopause, which it sounds like it's possible that this is what's happening to you, is that whilst what we want to see is this smooth transition of estrogen slowly tapering off, it can actually go a little bit crazy where it's up 1 minute and down the next and then back up again. And so you could be swinging into estrogen dominance where it's dominating over every other hormone and creating some symptoms like what you've just told me. And then at the next minute, it's swinging down into low estrogen. So if you think about it like that, and that there's a link between estrogen and insulin resistance, the blood work that you had, that's a snapshot in time, right? So it's telling us what's happening at that exact moment that blood is drawn in from your body. So in that moment, you could have been in an estrogen downswing.
Okay, sorry.
And that could have been creating some issues with your insulin at that moment. And then, a week from then, it's a completely different picture. So pathology is like a window into what's happening at that very moment, and it's very useful in that regard, but it's also not telling the whole story of what's going on. So I would agree with the naturopath and say that it's worth retesting your insulin levels to see what's going on and see if it's matching what was read before or if it's a different scenario now. Yeah, it's always worth retesting. And because we know that you do exercise, which is a big preventer of insulin resistance, you take care of your body, you have a lot of fiber and vegetables. I would say there's no reason that you would be insulin resistant other than maybe your estrogen is dropping suddenly and staying down for a while and creating this picture.
Mm-hmm. And so let's say that I was your patient and you're looking at these symptoms that I'm presenting you with. And I mean, I think I'm 7 weeks from having stopped injecting progesterone and taking estrogen pills. And I do still feel that I am withdrawing from that. I don't really know how long it will take for them to be fully done. I'm hoping that after the next cycle, I'll be more like it's out,
I would say to give your body at least 3 months to really shift back to its sort of normal rhythms, because it can take 3 months for our follicles to mature to drop the egg that's happening in the cycle now. So if you think back then when you were given synthetic hormones to help things along for the IVF cycle, it is a type of trauma on the body. And so that trauma or that stress on the body carries through the next few cycles until we move out of that 3-month window, that 90-day window for those follicles that would have been maturing along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say it's completely normal for you to still be feeling like things aren't quite right just yet.
Oh my, I can cry over anything, Mel. You tell me that you spilled your coffee and I would likely cry over that. And I am a crier, but I definitely have noticed. And if you're as I am with my body, I'm like, this is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I noticed, so this is funny because I never weight myself. Like it's not a thing that I do often, but I obviously when you're doing treatments, I weight myself because they need to know your starting weight. And right after I found out that I wasn't pregnant, I did fasting cleanse with my sister. So it was just like not eating breakfast essentially, but I was eating whatever. I consulted with him, like, is this safe to do? But I was eating a great lunch and a great supper and just fasting. And I was thinking like I'm detoxifying from all these synthetic hormones. I might have dropped a few pounds throughout, mostly water, I'm going to say. Oh, that was 5 weeks ago when I finished that cleanse. On Sunday, I woke up feeling light and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to weigh myself. I wonder what's happening. I am 8 pounds heavier. That's like.
And then when you weighed yourself before the IVF round?
Yes.
Not
before the IVF, right after IVF. So I had
right after
hormones and stuff, but I don't think that they had, I am wondering if that's, I'm thinking it's hormones. Like, it's not like that, and I ate the last 5 weeks, everything that I could have found.
I would say that is definitely to do with the hormones and the body's way of recalibrating after that, after that surge of hormones. So your body has to deal with that insurge of hormones through the liver, so that detoxification pathways, and that's a process. And yeah, I think that your body is probably just trying to get through the process, and maybe part of that is just to holding on to some safe weight, whilst your body goes through this process. I can't pinpoint exactly why that would be, but it's definitely got to do with the fact that your body's been through a lot in the last few months, trying to hold on to a pregnancy and then losing a pregnancy and then having to clear off these hormones and try and get back to its normal state. It's definitely a process. So I think that would be part of it. And to that, I would say you just need to be super, super kind to yourself, because weight is I have such an issue with the scales, because it's telling us a number. It's not telling us the story behind the number,
And I told my personal trainer, because all along I've been telling her, like, even though my body looks so different, because I noticed it looks so different, I haven't gained any weight. I'm sure I haven't gained any weight. Like, I still feel in my clothes, so not have. However, it looks drastically different. And so I was saying it was the hormones. So today I tell her, like, remember how I've been telling you I haven't gained any weight? I was lying. I'm 8 pounds heavier. And so she's like, how are you coping? Are you okay? And I'm like, I immediately just thought, well, that's the hormones. It's a response of,
yeah.
Which is why I'm bringing it up here, because I especially for anybody listening who has been going through cycles, everybody's very unique. And you might have a friend who went through IVF and you didn't see a change in their body weight or, moods or nothing. And then you might be very different. And because I am so aware and sensitive to my body, I've realized like I haven't had any like drastic changes to my life, which is why I wanted to sort of raise that awareness. And I'm happy that you sided with what I suspected was.
Yeah, totally. Give it time and be kind to yourself, because, your body is your vessel and it's just a number,
And you know what? I was thinking of that. You talk about like, what do we do just for fun? Not a lot. What do we do just to make life harder for ourselves?
Yeah, so much.
Everything that we can. Just about everything that we can. Like, let me just have another thought that's going to make me feel really shitty about who I am and how hard life has been up until now. So I feel that has to be a conscientious effort. Mel, and just to close it off, what kind of advice would you then have, maybe 5 go-tos to anybody who suspects is going through perimenopause? What kind of health habits should they look into? Should they be booking an appointment with a nutritionist? Are there things that I have never considered so much working with somebody who can really tune into perimenopause as I am now? And that was thanks to your account that I'm thinking like, yeah, I want to not have crazy peaks and lows. I would like to support my body through this calibration.
Yeah. Well, the first piece of advice I would offer is that don't get stuck on trying to diagnose yourself as I'm perimenopausal or I'm not perimenopausal. Just look at what symptoms you've got going on and take a look at your lifestyle and what could be potentially driving those symptoms. So for 99.9% of us, stress is a factor there. So how are you addressing your stress? Are you addressing your stress at all? And if not, how can you change that? So the top things, like we spoke about before, mindfulness, meditation, bringing the joy, movement. So real feminine sort of movements are really great for hormone balance. So things like yoga, Pilates, walking in nature to bring, to help our nervous system calibrate even more. Those kind of things, they're really important. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, look at this idea of insulin resistance, and there is a test for it, but can you look at your lifestyle and think of where you could be making improvements? So things like reducing your intake of sugary drinks and, sugary junk foods, and eating past, 8, 9 o'clock at night if you think about what you're doing there, you're spiking your blood sugar before you go to bed. So you're going to have trouble sleeping. Then you're going to have a bad sleep. You're going to wake up and you're going to crave more sugar and you're going to spike that insulin again.
And
you're going to
just for a second, that includes a glass of wine before you go to bed or at supper.
Yeah. Yes. And alcohol, should be said, is not your hormone's friend, for sure. I'm not going to tell anyone, it's obviously everyone's individual choice, but the information out there is that alcohol is really a big driver of inflammation that can then lead to insulin resistance, that can then lead to hormone imbalance. Mm-hmm. So maybe take a look at your habits around alcohol as well. And I would be going to my doctor and asking for them to run some pretty stock standard blood tests to check nutrient levels as well. So nutrient depletion can be a big part of the picture. Low iron, low vitamin D, low zinc, all of those things. If they are not optimal, then they are contributing to those symptoms as well. And so putting a plan in place to get those nutrient levels back up. So with obviously nourishing food, but also, do you need to maybe start supplementing with some of these? And that's when I would be employing the services of someone in that natural health sort of realm. So a nutritionist or a naturopathic doctor over there in Canada and the US to help guide you through that process. So they're the big ones that I would start with.
And if people walk away with one thing that they really should focus on, if they think that they are perimenopause, what will be your biggest one? From like, you just gave us two, but like the one thing they're like, okay, if you ignore everything else I've said.
Yeah, look at your stress and look at how that's impacting your nervous system. And if you start there, it's just a really good place to start. Start there and see what changes.
I think this is so powerful. It's not the answer I was expecting you to give me. And I think it's so powerful because we do hear about stress impacting our health, but we never make the correlation strictly. And I love it, obviously. I mean, we should be doing. And you know what, guys? Mindfulness, it's life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously say that.
Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite book that you refer people to for mindfulness?
No, not a book. I refer all of my clients to go and find themselves an app that works for them to help guide them through meditation and mindfulness. So for me, it's Insight Timer. I love Insight Timer app. There's the free version and there's the paid version. And if you want to spend the money, it's not very much money. I think it was like $90 for the year or something. It gives you access to so many more recordings and a lot of courses in how to meditate and, meditation for anxiety or meditation to reduce stress or whatever it is that you feel like you need, it's there. So I love that as a resource.
I love that. I loved that one the most until I found Headspace, which
I've heard great things about Headspace.
It's a bit more expensive and it's definitely one. I don't know, I love it. Same thing, same idea. They're always teaching you something. They're not just guiding you. There's a teaching of mindfulness. So if you want an app that will teach you, I'm sure Insight Timer was my favorite, and I know many people who still love it. So now you have two resources, and I'm just looking around to favorite book. I would probably say Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn is one of my favorite ones. And when I used to teach mindfulness, that was a book that I recommend to all my students to read. It is a Bible. It's a big book, but my God, it teaches you.
And I also love Atomic Habits, which I know you love. And I mentioned that because whenever you're trying to implement new ways of being into your life, it's really about, implementing the habit of that thing. So reading that one is super useful in that regard.
I second that. Now we're giving you 2 apps, 2 books, and a heck of a lot of information here. Now, Mel, you said to look for somebody in the States or in Canada, but if you can find the right time to work with the person, I think that you'd be open to having
totally
international clients.
Definitely. And I will mention too that I have my online course, Amazing Mums Academy, not just for mums, it's for women that want to learn more about their hormones and how to balance them. And
not let the title disguise you.
And I'm currently working on an October release of my new group training coaching program, which will be all about perimenopause. So yeah, if you're interested in this topic, it's worth following me over on Instagram or signing up to my email list as well to find out when that gets released. And that's going to be, I think, really useful for women who want to know more about their bodies and how to start this recalibration process that I've been talking about today.
And I'm going to say I'm a friend of Mel, and I would soon be a coaching client of Mel. I want to be in that group. But I'm going to tell you why you should have her as your nutritionist. Whenever I was having a really freaking bad day, I went on to Voxer, which is where we communicate, and I was like just explaining how I was feeling. And Mel said the magical word that made me feel normal and a million times better. You didn't jump in to give me any advice. You didn't tell me how to feel better. You simply said, Olga, sounds like you're having a shitty day. And for some reason, I was like, yes, thank you for putting words into how I was feeling. So I can only picture you as my nutritionist if I come and tell you I ate all the wrong things, that you will be just saying to me, sounds like you ate a lot of shit. Okay, move on. And it wouldn't be like your typical nutritionist that you feel so judged by or so enabled by. We're like, oh, it's okay, make no progress. I think that you have such a compassionate approach, but also such a refreshing, authentic, down-to-earth approach that I personally vibe with. I appreciate, and I know that some people listening would really enjoy. So don't let the fact that Mel is in Australia take you away from seeking her coaching or her help. As you can tell from this episode, she is a source of knowledge, especially if you are one of my followers with fertility questions and you want your hormones, if you have PCOS, some of the conditions that we know for a fact impact ovulation and where your hormones are out of whack for moments of the year. This is not a bad teammate to have. You want to be as supported as you can be, stabilizing your body and giving your body what it needs to flourish, not just survive and get past it, but to actually improve your living conditions. Because honestly, girls, when our hormones are out of place, our living existence is hell. And I think our husbands would probably agree, or the people that live with us will probably say, yes, please get her hormones in check. So from my heart to yours, Mel, thank you so much for joining us in this episode. I am so thankful. I am so passionate about the subject, and I encourage everybody to follow. What's your Instagram account?
It's at @melfinlay_nutritionist. And my website is www.melissafinlaynutritionist.com.
So what I would recommend you is to head over to the show notes and grab her information and follow her. And by the way, if you guys found this particular episode helpful, drop me some love. Let me know that you liked it. Write a review on the podcast. This allows me to have more incredible guest speakers into the podcast. Believe it or not, this is not Mel's case because she's a good friend and she would have said yes, I think, regardless.
Yes.
Because this is not a paying gig. We don't pay guest speakers to come into podcasts. They look at how many reviews the podcast has, how many people who have subscribed to the podcast. And that's how they determine whether or not their time is worth it. So if you want me to have amazing speakers like Mel, do this girl a favor, like and subscribe. And also leave me a note. And it doesn't have to be a loving note. If you totally disagree with what is being said or shared, I am always open to a good debate, a healthy debate. So
yeah.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'll see you guys next Monday. And Mel, I love you so much. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having
me. Confidence is about taking empowered action with consistency. If you are done wishing you had more confidence with fill out the blank. And if you're ready to put an end to the bully that lives inside your mind, I want to invite you to my next Detox the Mind 5-day workshop, where you will learn proven strategies to go from self-critical to self-confident. For $97, you get 5 days of live coaching calls with me, workbooks to go along with your lessons, and teachings that will literally transform your life. This workshop will break you free from the prison of your own thoughts. Our next workshop begins April 11th, and you can join the waiting list today. Head over to the show notes or my website and make sure you add your name so you can be notified as soon as we open for registrations. I hope to see you inside.